Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Secrets of the Sire. We do this every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, talkradio.ny. Live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and everywhere podcasts are downloaded. I'm your host, Michael Dolce. We are going to be talking about Spider-Man Into the SpiderVerse, giving you our review. Is it the best Spider-Man film of all time? And where does it rank with all the rest? Plus, I have Francois from Young the Giant coming on, doing an interview as well. As always, like I said, my name is Michael Dolce, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, in parts unknown, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine here in the Sire bunker.
You're in the bunker?
Yeah, we're in the undisclosed location, the Christmas location. We're at the Christmas getaway.
You're in the Christmas getaway?
Christmas getaway.
That's some crazy stuff here. All right, Christmas getaway, Hassan. Shining through. All right, Spider-Man Into SpiderVerse. It's making money. I don't know. You know, it's funny. We had kind of talked on a previous show about how it wasn't quite tracking. However, it is kind of tracking. And people, the industry saying it's good. 35 million. They're saying this is a good thing. In the opening weekend, and people are giving
it was tracking to make about 30 million, and then some of the, as I said before, some of the punditry. Some of the YouTube punditry was like, well, it's only going to make 30 million, and that's pretty bad for a Spider-Man movie. But it's an animated movie.
It's an animated movie, though, so I don't see why they would think that's such a bad thing. Like, why does that all of a sudden dictate, just because it's animated? Now,
I don't know, because it's a problem, and the internet loves a problem.
Well, sure, who doesn't love a problem? Who doesn't love a good problem?
It was like, what, 90%? It had a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. So, of course, there is no problem with it.
Sure.
So they had to find a problem, and the problem is it's an animated movie that's only tracking to make 30 million, and so it's made 35 million. So, but I mean, like high praise, the best movie of the year, over and reminiscing.
What's a better show, Seinfeld or The Simpsons? And we're talking about The Simpsons at the height of being The Simpsons here. And I always felt like The Simpsons had an unfair advantage over Seinfeld. And I would always give the nod to Seinfeld because Seinfeld's live action. So to come up with that kind of writing and to be that clever and good, to me, kind of gave it a little bit of an advantage. Whereas The Simpsons, don't get me wrong, and this is before they lasted 28,000 seasons and, went through different iterations. We're talking about the Conan O'Brien years. We're talking about all that stuff. Monorail episodes. You can't do a monorail episode with Seinfeld and get the same kind of laughs because you can stretch the truth. You can't do, Stampy the Elephant on Seinfeld. You can't do a lot of the stuff that they did, which allows you to do an animation. And what does that have to do with SpiderVerse? It has to do with the fact that I think people are saying it's the best Spider-Man film ever. It's like, well, look at what they can do. There's no... Yes, it was a $100 million budget, etc., etc. It's an animated film. Like, there are no boundaries to what it can do. Now, that being said, I think this is a great Seinfeld versus Seinfeld versus Simpsons debates because I think Spider-Verse is as well written a movie and takes advantage of all the stuff that they can do better than most live action movies. So at its core, it has tremendous writing, it has tremendous character development. What I love about animated movies too, it seems to hit all the right beats. And this is true with a lot of animated movies like the Incredibles and movies in that vein where it's like, man, if they could just write like this for live action. Now, obviously, some of the extra stuff. The Spider Sense, the 2D animation and 3D animation, the having comic book bubbles and balloons. Although, to be honest with you can sort of do that in live action now too. You can do combinations. Those to me are bells and whistles. I think at the core, this is a very well written story.
But that's the core of every good movie. That's the problem with the animation. A lot of times, animation has to start with a story. And animation has to follow through with the story, and then they get the actors to come in, and the actors follow the animation a lot of times. The way it's done is it can be done in two ways. The actors come in and act first, and they do the story first, and then they do the animation to the action to the action of the voices, or it goes the other way around. Either way, you have a through line of story without a lot of gimmickry. And I mean, all your gimmick is going to be in the hijinks of whatever the animation is. Yeah. So you're not playing for. You're all in the design stage, in the writing. You're already getting out your. Wouldn't this be cool if, the movie took a long time to put together. It cost $90 million to do it because of the way they were innovative with the animation. So, I mean, it's just as, I mean, I don't think it took that long to film Infinity Wars.
Right, sure.
You just can't, and I mean, what I mean when I get away with, because CGI is to such a level that you could pretty much do everything live action that you can do in a cartoon, almost everything. But I mean, because it's a cartoon, we allow for more implausible stupidity.
But that's what I'm talking about, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, The Simpsons, you can have a monorail going around and round and round and round in a circle, and Leonard Nimoy and Homer throwing a giant A out the window or whatever it was, giant M out the window, and tearing up Springfield. You can do all that because there is no budget, so I feel like as if there's just a greater latitude for pulling things off where live action can't, and to me that's why I'll always give the nod to a live action film over an animated film when they talk about this is the best this or that. Now we are going to today we are going to go through the Spider-Man films. I want to rank them. We don't have to go into depth into all of them because I think things like Spider-Man 3 or Amazing Spider-Man 2 are going to fall below. I mean, we could have a great argument as to which one's worse, but we don't need to necessarily dive into it. But I'm really curious in terms of just at its core, who's got the best Peter Parker? Who's got the best Spider-Man? Who's got the best action? Who's got the best quippiness too and humor? And I think that's an important element to Spider-Man that I think this movie captures in a way much of the live-action movies didn't capture. There's a certain criteria for ranking all this stuff. But at the same time, again, I do definitely feel there's, animation has an unfair advantage when everyone's like, well, it's the best Spider-Man movie ever. Let's slow your roll here. Let's really dive deep. I mean, in this movie also, just from a writing standpoint, I think I'm going to give it, if you're giving it a grade, I'm giving it like an A- overall. So, I mean, we're talking high grades for this film, but not necessarily I'm not going nuts saying this is the best one ever. The villains kind of lent itself to you kind of knowing Spider-Man before he came in. I think my dad has no reference to, who's that big fat guy who's beating people up. I was like, that's the Kingpin. Oh, that's the Kingpin? Like, he knows the name but doesn't know the character enough. So there's like nods to like Doc Ock. There's nods to, I mean, not just nods. I mean, these characters are in there. Revamped Scorpion, Tombstone, which I love seeing. There's little things that as a fanboy I enjoyed, but did we really get a development of the villains in this movie any better than we did in the live action Spider-Man, or did the live action Spider-Mans actually do, I think, a better job in some cases? I'm thinking Spider-Man 2 in particular, of giving us better villains.
No. You're not really going to top Spider-Man 2. As and the fact that it's a live action movie is also a feather in his cap. The origin of Doc Ock and just that movie in general. It's really a well done film. It's what convinced me about the Spider-Man movies, because I didn't like the first Spider-Man.
Yeah, I didn't love it. I loved it at the time because it was like a dream come true to see Spider-Man on screen. But I did not love.
Yeah. I was never with Tobey Maguire in that first movie because it was a lot of gimmickry. Yeah. And it was a lot of Sam Raimi trying to find out what the true voice of Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
And I don't think he found it out until the second one. You know, and I really didn't like Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. I thought that mask, I thought everything was just really kind of hokey. I thought, which was really ironic because it's a Marvel movie,
yeah,
I thought it was trying too hard to be Batman, to be a Batman movie.
Yeah.
Especially with the Danny Elfman soundtrack.
I mean, you can really argue that Amazing Spider-Man was trying too hard to be the Christopher Nolan Batmans too. I mean, actually, there's not really much of an argument. They were really trying to be the Christopher Nolan Batmans, you know.
But I think Spider-Man 2 just really really set the tone for the MCU, even though it would come like 10 years later. It really found its own voice. It found its own rhythm. It was audacious. It did things like, there's no elevated train system in Manhattan.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, we don't care. We just want an elevated train system for Spider-Man. And everybody found out who Peter Parker was, that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. I mean, he lost his mask a whole bunch of times, and it just didn't matter. It was just such a well-done story. It didn't matter. And Alfred Molina is just, he is the equivalent of Heath Ledger, Heath Ledger's Joker. And he's like, he hasn't been topped as a villain, as a comic book villain for the Marvel universe.
Sure. I agree.
However, I don't think it was necessary for Into the Spider-Verse. I think the point of Into the Spider-Verse was that this universe was a world that was already established, was already taking place. If we're seeing it from Miles Morales' point of view, then everything is we're meeting all these characters just as he is. So we still have his point of view to guide us, to comfort us into learning on a curve, like he was doing.
Yeah.
So therefore, it didn't require a pre-established origin for Kingpin. Didn't require a pre-established origin for Doc Ock. No spoilers, but Doc Ock is in the movie. It didn't require pre-established.
Look, at this point, if they haven't seen it, that's their problem, not our problem.
No. All right. If you want to take that out too.
I always do.
That's fine. Yeah, I know. I disagree. But anyway, because I always do. But as I'm saying, I don't think it was required. Also, I mean, how many times have they done? How many times has Bruce Wayne lost his parents?
Well, it's the same thing with Uncle Ben, right? I mean, it's the same thing. How many times have you seen Uncle Ben on screen?
That's what I'm talking about. You just get tired of these origin stories. It's good to start Amelia's Rest. It's good to start like in the thick of things, because that's exactly what Miles Morales would be experiencing.
Right.
Because it's a whole broad world, especially if you're going to introduce the Spider-Verse. You don't have how much time you're going to spend on the little things.
Right.
You have to establish that there's multiple universes, and you have to establish these, these 10 or 15 other Spider-Men,
right.
Spider people. So, I mean,
right.
I think they spent their time wisely.
Let me ask you a question. This popped up on Twitter. It was from an IGN editor, and it was a tweet that he brought out, and I don't have his name because I just thought of it right now. But he said that he polled a couple people, and the things they loved about SpiderVerse. One, obviously, having a black Spider-Man on screen was very important to some people, and we've discussed that issue, and we're not going to discuss that issue, but that was one thing he wrote. The other thing was the mom was speaking in Spanish. And that was very important because the person they were talking to was Latino, so it was great. They thought it was really great. That was one of my biggest gripes of the film, because I felt like, and you and I have kind of talked about this when we talk about Miles Morales Spider-Man, the Morales part of it, actually the Morales is the father, the Afro-Latino, the book for the most part focused on the Afro, not so much the Latino. I felt like the mom was so underdeveloped in this film, and maybe there wasn't room, and maybe there wasn't time, but she has a better character in the most recent incarnation of Miles Morales Spider-Man when he finally merges with the 616 universe. This is really geeky for anybody. Anybody out there is like, I don't know what did he just say? Her character's more developed in the comics later on. In this film, I don't think they really develop her at all, and I feel like they kind of threw her in speaking Spanish as hey, this is don't forget he's half Latino also. The solution to me obviously was I'd like to see her character develop more. Maybe the two of them have more of a rapport, and you don't have to be so kind of like obvious. Like to me, it was almost pandering. And I didn't like that. I thought it did not do her character justice. Was that a problem for you? Is that something you thought was an issue?
No.
Not at all.
No.
And maybe it's just me, and I'm able to see.
Look, if we're gonna get into, why is it pandering? She's Spanish. He's Spanish. She speaks to him in Spanish. Why would that be pandering?
I thought it was like just a throw-in at the end not at the end. I thought it was kind of like a throw-in versus genuinely developing her culture as part of the film. It was, oh hey, she's Spanish too, and it's like, no, well she's Latino, and there's a there's a whole storyline, and we talked on Twitter about this. I actually talked with the IGN editor on Twitter about this in a respectful way, which then we got blocked from Twitter because it's not how you do things on Twitter. But they essentially said, like, again, my answer to this was not, don't have her speak Spanish. My answer to this was, let's see a little more of her character. Let's have her character be a little more important in this film. I think it's very important to have different representation in there. I think it's very important that the Latino side of Miles Morales doesn't kind of get overlooked as it kind of did when the comic first started. She has a whole sequence in the comics when she's talking to her mom. And she actually brings her mom, and the mother is actually kind of influencing her on how she's handling her relationship with Miles, because at that time she doesn't know he's Spider-Man. The mom actually hires a private investigator, if I believe it's the mom, to find out what's going on with Miles, because he's not doing things at school. And you have this great mom-daughter, Latino culture is kind of brought into it in terms of how she's raised. So, and again, I know it's a lot for a first film, and they have room to do it in the second film. But that's my answer. My answer was, I wish they would have actually just done more with her.
That I can understand. I get where you're coming from. I don't think it was necessary. I don't think that they could have fit it in at this point. But I don't understand. What I don't get is the pandering thing. But I don't want to get hung up on that.
Yeah.
But everything that is ethnocentric. Mm-hmm. Comes off as pandering, to people. I don't understand.
No,
that.
See, and this is the thing. A great idea though. Nothing about the father, the uncle, nothing about that came off as pandering. That came off as fleshed out characters. It came out as fleshed out cultural identity, being a part of who the character is. How his makeup, his upbringing. Like, to me, everything that felt organic. So. To me, I'm not actually having an issue with the Afrocentric part of the character at all. And I'm not really having a problem with the Latino-centric part of it. I just feel like it was non-existent, and then they kind of threw you a bone with, well, the mom speaks Spanish, so, okay, so he's half Latino, that's great. Whereas I just don't think they just did enough with it. So to answer your question, no, I don't think, I think there's a way to do it where, it's part of the character, it's part of the identity of the character, it's part of the upbringing, it feels organic, it's part of the story, and they did that with the father, with the uncle, with him, in general, and so that to me was, I think, exactly why it became. It stopped me for a second in the movie theater. I'm engrossed in the storyline up until the very point where the mom kind of does that, because I didn't feel like it was I feel like they did a lot of it, and they did, and to me they're doing it to kind of, again, they're doing it to just to be like, hey, by the way, and it's like, no, we didn't need that. We maybe find a different way to make it part of it. I don't know, or maybe just, I don't know. She did it over the top to me a little bit, to where it didn't feel natural. I feel like. I feel like if they had started having a conversation in Spanish, both of them would have actually felt more organic than her kind of like just dropping in sentences and then interpreting for the audience what she was saying, because if you didn't speak Spanish, you didn't know. That to me, there you go. I just solved it. That's what they should have done. They should have had a conversation in Spanish. Both of them. Right? Like, wouldn't that like, I don't have the luxury of a two language household, but I feel like
you don't live in the city though, so you don't understand Spanglish, and that's all.
Well,
very
let me ask you then.
natural for someone to say-
Maybe you know something I don't, and that's good.
It's very natural for people to speak in Spanish. One person to be speaking in Spanish, the other person to answer in English.
But then let me ask you a question. Is it then if the person speaking in Spanish and then interpreting what they said afterwards? Like if they say like necesito el baño, I need to go use the bathroom. Like they're not you know what I mean? Like that's where it just felt like it just didn't feel natural to me. I would think like necesito el baño. Okay, yeah, go down the hallway and go use the bathroom. You know, like that would be the exchange between the two. All right, we're nitpicking. I get it. We're gonna take a short.
What do you mean we?
Well, you're part of the show, so you're naturally you're naturally brought in on this. All right, we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and then we're gonna go to our next segment, which is we're gonna rank the Spider-Man films based on a certain criteria. I'm gonna tell you what that criteria is next. Guys, just want to let you know that Sire Volume 2 is available right now. It's at mikebooks.com/store. There's free shipping. Enter code SIREV2, all in uppercase. Also, which we've been talking about this for a while now, Mainstream is in stores now. Issue 5 just wrapped. We've actually got this being shopped around to a number of different studios, which is pretty exciting. And we have it in a particular zombie studio, and I'll leave it at that. And hopefully some big things. But if you want to read it before anything big happens with it, go check it out in the Mainstream. All right, we are coming right back, and I want to get to ranking the Spider-Man films. All right, here's my criteria for ranking the Spider-Man films. All right, who's got the best Peter Parker? Who's got the best Spider-Man? Who's got the best costume? And who's got the best humor? And then last criteria is going to be who's got the best villain. And we'll throw a bonus one in at the very end if we have enough time. All right. Best Peter Parker of all the Spider-Man films. I think SpiderVerse actually makes a case that they have a great Peter Parker, except obviously it's a different Peter Parker in the fact that it's Jake Johnson and he's over the hill, right? The original Peter Parker that we kind of saw, we only got a little glimpse of Peter Parker in this one, and he was blonde, which at least they explained why he was blonde, right? Tobey Maguire, to me, is probably from the Sam Raimi franchise. And we're gonna group these, by the way. We're going to rank in groups. We're going to go Sam Raimi. We're going to go Andrew Garfield. Or you could say Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films. Andrew Garfield films. Or we're going to say the SpiderVerse films. Okay? We're gonna do it in that capacity. We're not gonna, like I said, Spider-Man 3, terrible film. Amazing Spider-Man 2, terrible film. All right, we don't need to go in ad nauseum at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's your best Peter Parker?
Tobey Maguire.
Why?
He was the most sympathetic to me. He was the most. He sold the underdog a lot better. He was slow coming into his own as a genius, and he kind of captured the awkwardness of the fact that the genius doesn't always mesh with the real world. Like just because you're a genius in science doesn't mean that you know how to navigate the real world.
Yeah.
And I think they just developed his character better. They developed the world of Peter Parker better in the Sam Raimi films.
Yeah.
Where he was kind of the ultimate underdog until he was Spider-Man, and that was really the only thing that made him exceptional, and that was the only thing about him that nobody knew, with the exception of Mary Jane. So that's my favorite. That's my favorite Peter Parker.
And before anybody jumps at me, there's only been one Miles Morales movie, so we're not looking for the best Miles Morales, obviously. So if you sit there and say, why is Peter Parker?
Well, if you said Peter Parker, yeah.
No, I'm just saying that's one of my criteria. Who has the best Peter Parker? Okay. Because there's only been one Miles Morales film, so we can't really we can't go into any detail about that. Maybe I'm the only one that thought of it, but I'm just trying to herd the negativity off
Of course.
Before we get anywhere. All right. Who's got the best Spider-Man? Now, this is different than costume. Costume's its own thing, because I think you and I are going to be on the same page as to which has the best costume. But who's got the best Spider-Man? Like, when they're in Spider-Man, when they're in the outfit, when they're fighting, when, the whole presence of Spider-Man, which film has the best Spider-Man?
Amazing Spider-Man.
I'm going to actually say SpiderVerse. I thought the initial sequence with the with the, I guess we'll call him the ultimate Spider-Man, because we have lack of a better term. I thought that was perfect Spider-Man. Like, all around. It's just like that, his whole presence. Not the Jake Johnson version either. I'm actually not even talking about that. That's the luxury of this film, is we get all these different versions of Spider-Man. I thought he actually, to me, is like, that's Spider-Man. And then again, it made me think again, does these films, me fail English, that's impossible. Do these films have more of an advantage in being an animated film? Can a live action film truly capture everything that
That's two different questions now.
It is. I agree.
Because which one is better? It doesn't matter how they achieved it.
Okay.
It just matters how you interpret it.
All right.
And how you feel about it.
All right. It's fair enough. That's a fair point. All right.
I just don't want to just get caught up in two different and then never end up answering your question.
Sure. Sure. Best costume.
I definitely think Miles Morales' costume in Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite.
Oh, okay. Oh, you took it in a different direction, actually. I was gonna.
Because his costume in Into the Spider-Verse is not his comic book costume.
No, it's not. Oh, all right. You threw me for a loop, because I actually was thinking more in terms of the traditional Spider-Man costume. As to which movie got the traditional one, but
you mean who got the costume right?
Yeah.
Who got the costume more right?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is they keep changing it. The thing I liked about the Raimi Spider-Man is they got the costume right immediately, and they kept it that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to Batman, we keep changing his costume every year, being kind of a gimmick to the point where by the end he was like Iron Man. He had so much armor on.
Mm-hmm.
I like Tom Holland's costume. I liked it. I liked his original costume. The Iron Spider-Man I don't like at all.
Yeah.
The new the PS4 Spider-Man that just came out, I don't like that at all.
Yeah. Well, the Tom Holland one is garbage. Absolute garbage.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Iron Spider, not garbage. His actual,
I don't like the Iron Spider.
Okay, all right. I don't love Iron Spider either, but it was at least that's a storyline in the canon that at least there has some reference to that. You know what I mean? Like, there's something to that extent.
Yeah, no,
I'm talking about his traditional Spider-Man costume in Civil War and in Homecoming is absolute garbage.
Spider-Man 1, Tobey Maguire, they got the costume perfect.
I thought Amazing Spider-Man 2, they got it pretty damn good.
But it was a repeat. It was just his traditional costume.
But it was his eyes. See, they got the eyes. They got the McFarlane eyes that I loved, and I got to give it to them on that.
Okay, well, all right, fair enough.
Who's got the best humor? Spider-Man humor. Best quips.
Again, I gotta say Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, I think, worked really well.
It did.
Tobey Maguire was better Peter Parker.
Absolutely.
Andrew Garfield came off like too smug and kind of creepy, stalkerish creepy. To me.
Oh yeah, and he was fidgeting, and he's like, I'm an actor, and I got to do something really actory, and I got to put this thing. My character, he's a spider, he's constantly twitching.
He was never an underdog. He was never an underdog.
No.
But his Spider-Man was great.
Yeah.
And look, like I said, one of the greatest comic book scenes ever is when he catches that police car on his back.
Yeah.
In the Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's an amazingly well done piece of scenery, of special effects married with live action. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire, like, as Spider-Man, but he just didn't. Until they didn't really get his Spider-Man voice right until about Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And even then, the Garfield Spider-Man just kind of blew it away, because that's basically what Spider-Man is. Spider-Man is just, he's a troll. You know, his humor is very troll-like. He's very antagonistic. He's very belittling and demeaning to everybody he's fighting. He's very, everything is a joke to him. And Andrew Garfield got it right. Tom Holland did a good job, but Tom Holland, the problem with the MCU Spider-Man is they keep playing him off Iron Man and some of the older characters.
Yeah.
So the gag keeps coming off that he's a kid and he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like awkward pop references.
Ironically, I think Tom Holland
that.
is like 2021, so I think that's his voice at this point. You know.
Well, I'm not talking about his voice really.
No, but the voice.
His,
no, but see, the
humor.
the voice plays into it. The voice, his young sounding voice.
In your opinion, yeah, I get you.
Bleeds into the fact that that he consistently gets played off as a teenager. Look, it works because he's a teenager. But there's definitely something to that where if he had a deeper voice or a more grown up sounding voice, I think that gag would not be overplayed as it is.
All right.
Who's got the best supporting cast?
Oh boy. Again. Well, I don't know.
This is a tough one, right?
We can't really. We're not talking about the Into the SpiderVerse, though, right? We're just talking about the.
No.
Because it's not really his supporting cast in Into the SpiderVerse.
Yeah.
Into the SpiderVerse has the best cast of all of them, but they're all Spider-Men, so he doesn't. They're not really all supporting.
Yeah.
They're all leads, kind of.
Yeah.
I would say that the second Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2, has got the best because he's got the best villain.
Yeah.
He's Kristen Dunst is really great as Mary Jane. She's believable as Mary Jane. You buy her as Mary Jane. Like I said, the villains are fine. Aunt May is great. We're past the great power comes great responsibility origin antics.
Yes.
I unlike a lot of people, I didn't mind the James Franco the slow build to him becoming the Hobgoblin.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the second one. I think Spider-Man 2 has the best ensemble cast. Personally, I was invested in all of them. I bought all of them.
I think it's unique too in Homecoming the fact that they merged Miles Morales' supporting cast with Peter Parker's supporting cast.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I didn't like it.
Which actually causes issues now if they do eventually. I mean, look, you can write yourself out of anything. You can write yourself out of any situations. But it becomes an issue because you definitely.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mesh well, and I think it's ill will. It kind of breeds ill will because if they wanted to go for a lot of people wanted the MCU Spider-Man to be Miles Morales, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that was a pipe dream, but a lot of people wanted that. That was the big thing. So it seems like a compromise is to do Peter Parker, but then they gave him Miles Morales' his background, except for Mary Jane, who they kind of changed, but basically he got I mean, she's not really Mary Jane, so she's just MJ.
Yeah.
So it's not even. So they didn't really make Mary Jane black. They just altered that.
Yeah.
But the thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about that is like, if you don't want to do Miles Morales, you want to do traditional Peter Parker, or Peter Pan.
Did they want to do Peter Pan? Because that would have been a completely ballsy move on their part.
They should have done Peter Pan.
Yeah.
It should have been Wendy. It all should have been Wendy. But if you want to do Peter Parker, then do Peter Parker. Find another way to do it, but do Peter Parker. Don't just kind of steal from all other facets of, and then just claim that that's a genuine Peter Parker. Like I said, I like Tom Holland. I think the MCU. I think he's a good MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that because of the nature of how he was introduced and the fact that it's basically Iron Man's universe.
Yeah.
Because Iron Man was the first to get there, and we see most of the stuff through the eyes of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
We see it through most of his pathology. He's always going to be subordinate. He's never going to be a character on his own.
Yeah.
And even in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, he played a second fiddle to Iron Man, who kept swooping in and kind of parenting him, which was kind of, I thought, kind of diminished his ability to grow as a character on his own.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I liked it, but I think he's always going to be a supporting player in the MCU. He's never going to be like a prominent. Yeah. Like Captain America is on equal terms with Iron Man, right? The Black Widow is on equal terms with Iron Man. Mm-hmm. Like Thor, equal terms with Iron Man. Yeah. Spider-Man is never going to be on equal terms with Iron Man. Right. This is not going to happen. So it's going to be hard for him to come into his own the way they set him up.
That makes sense. Real quick, before we actually go and break every single movie down and just give a total rank, who's got the best villain? I don't think there's any argument on this one. I think Doc Ock, to me, is the best villain out of all of them.
Alfred Molina is perfect. Alfred Molina, like I said, is the equivalent of Heath Ledger's Joker. Yeah. Like, I liked Heath Ledger's Joker not as the Joker for Batman, but I think he was a fantastic comic book villain. Yeah. And he definitely outshined the Batman in those movies. And the other movies that did not have him are you could feel the loss. Yeah. You know, you could feel his absence.
Yeah, and this is exactly why also I feel as if the SpiderVerse itself, this is where it falls short. We know Kingpin was doing this to somehow bring back his daughter, his wife and his son from another dimension or another reality to reunite. Like you kind of get it, but you get a tertiary. You get like it's almost like a sketch and not a play. Versus, you know, if you think about it, you get the impression of why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah. But in Spider-Verse, I just feel like, well, why? Well, if I'm Tombstone and Doc Ock, and he's going to destroy the whole world looking for something that doesn't profit them, why are they going along with him? You know, is it just because he's the Kingpin? Like, there's no real explanation into why people are blindly following him, you know, besides the fact that he pays the bills. And yeah, okay, he pays the bills, but if he destroys the whole effing world, then well, what's the point? It's not like Tombstone's going to be profiting off of any of this stuff. So why would he do that?
It was questionable whether it would destroy the world. And one of the possibilities is it might destroy the world.
Yeah, so if I'm Doc Ock, Doc Ock's motivation I could see as being like...
a crazy scientist.
Right, and she wants to see... Right, she wants to see where this goes. She wants to see where this goes. Okay, I understand. If I'm Tombstone as a character, who I love, by the way, and I hope they bring him into the real Spider-Man, the live-action ones... I'm a gangster. I want to make money. I want to spend money. I want sexy women by my side, and I want to shoot guns and exercise my tombstoneness. I can't do that if there's a possibility this whole planet is going to be destroyed. I don't care how much money you're being paid. Money means nothing if you're not alive. So.
Well, yeah, but they weren't depicted except for Doc Ock, and they give the only one that really there are two of them. Basically had a mind of their own, or were depicted with minds of their own, right? Mm-hmm. So there was the Prowler, and there was Doc Ock. Doc Ock, her motivation was that she was a wacko, who just wanted to see if it would work, wanted to see it happen. So that's her motivation. So like it's the same as the equivalent again of the Joker.
Yes,
like, you know, just
totally.
I just wanted to watch the world burn.
Totally understood. Yes.
And the Prowler basically gave his reason, which was, I need to pay the bills, you know? So he might not have been thinking of it on that level. He might
also not have been on the inside as much, but Tombstone was his right-hand man. You know, Scorpion was his right-hand man. I mean, they're there.
But they might not have understood the consequences of what they were doing.
Well, and that's why I ask who has the best villain, because I don't think Spider-Verse comes through. I think one villain we're not talking about, though, is Michael Keaton's Vulture, which I thought was actually a fantastic villain.
He was a good villain, but again, villains are the reason I like Doc Ock is because they kind of got away with both aspects of the comic book villain trope. Yeah. Because they explained his motivation and tried to sympathize, you know, make him sympathetic. but then they got their way because they made him crazy.
Yeah.
So then he was also evil that needed to be stopped. So
right.
that movie could have ended either way. Like, you know, Spider-Man could have been like, "Oh, I got no choice. I got to kill this guy," and you would have understood. Or I could redeem him, and you would have understood.
Yeah.
Because they went for insanity. He was a good guy, and because of the traumatic circumstances that caused him to be Dr. Octopus in the first place, he lost his noodle.
Yeah.
And so he didn't even realize he was on the wrong side. You know, he was just tunnel vision. The problem, and then, you know, they did the same thing with the Kingpin. This was the problem with the MCU, the Daredevil television show, because they humanized. Well, they didn't really humanize it. They didn't make Kingpin too sympathetic, but they developed him to such a point where you understood where he was coming from.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it kind of made him. It kind of made him insufferable.
Yeah.
Because, like, he, you know, it just, you knew so much about him that you knew that he was basically defying his own moral compass just to get what he wanted.
Yeah. And
it just, after a while, it just made him despicable. Now, he's supposed to be despicable because he's a villain.
Right.
But the other dynamic that worked against it is because it took 12 hours, basically, for Daredevil to get around to getting him. He was just someone that I just couldn't stand seeing on a regular basis. I know I'm unique to that.
Now you get him in the SpiderVerse movie.
Huh?
Now you get him in the SpiderVerse movie.
Yeah, but he was like, okay, it was better. A villain. The good thing about the Spider-Man villains is that they're so audaciously gimmicky that you can one-note them.
Yeah.
You could argue the same thing for the Batman villains, but the Batman villains they're all facets of Batman's personality. They're all like offshoots of Batman's personality, writ large.
Yeah.
So basically, you could imbue them with a lot more nuance.
Sure.
But the Spider-Man villains are just kind of this really shitty thing happened to me, and I'm mad about it, and I got a gimmick, and I got electric bolts that come out of my hand,
right.
or I got a hovercraft, and I'm just gonna go around. I mean, the Green Goblin, once he killed the board of directors of Oscorp, he was done.
Yeah.
He didn't need to continue to be a villain. So, I mean, Spider-Man villains work as a one note. So, the incredible...
It's interesting you say that. The struggles that Peter Parker is going through are a wizard, which was cool. Kraven was a hunter. You know, it was always their gimmick was the interesting part about the villain, not the motivation. But
that's
then
the problem with the MCU that everybody's always complaining about, is that the villains aren't nuanced enough. But the Marvel villains...
Yeah.
I mean, not until recently. I mean, all their main characters had their own pathology. Like, Wolverine is his own worst enemy. Cyclops can't open his eyes without blasting all his friends. I mean, the reason that DC characters needed to have nuance to them, their villains need to have nuance, is because their heroes are one note.
Yeah.
You know, Superman is just the infallible god. Wonder Woman is an infallible Amazon. You know, Batman has the most nuance given to him.
Yeah.
But he's basically, he knows it all. He's going to figure it out. He's the biggest brain in the DC universe. Yeah. So their villains have to have all this miraculous, intricate color added to them, so that they can become interesting. It's the reverse in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Because all of their heroes have a pathology.
Yeah.
And so their villains get to be one note. Like Killmonger, what did Killmonger want? Killmonger was just mad he didn't get to be raised as a prince, and he was
Michael B. Jordan. He's Michael B. Jordan. He's in every single film possible. That's what he had going for him.
He's going to host the show next week.
All right. If you're viewing us on Facebook, again, go to facebook.com/Secrets of the Sire. Comment in here. I want to know your rank of all the Spider-Man films. We're going to do that in a second. We'll be answering your comments as they happen as well, too, so check us out on there. YouTube.com/Secrets of the Sire, and even on Twitter, if you go to @Michael_Dolce, which that will change in the coming weeks, so you can check us out there, and you can get us some comments there. So we'll be addressing what it is, but really fast, because then we got Young the Giant coming up right next. Give me your order. Can we agree that the let's say the best Spider-Man movie, or sorry,
Best Spider-Man movie.
Sorry, can we agree the worst Spider-Man movie is the Spider-Man 3?
No.
Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I can live with that. I can totally live with that. I am completely all right with. I can live with that.
Spider-Man 3 is not a great movie, though. It's not.
No.
But it's not as bad as the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay. All right. So that's good. That's that I think we're in agreement to that, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Oh,
so.
Awesome. What the show's gonna end?
Well, yes, most likely it will. What is the film after that, though? I mean, are we going Amazing Spider-Man 1 as like the not as good?
It's between Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 1, in my personal opinion. I think Spider-Man 1 is a little better than Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Okay. I can see that, and I can kind of agree with that. What's the next one? So we've got the only ones left. So let's say the bottom three: Amazing Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3. Then you said the first Spider-Man, or you said the what did you just say? The first Spider-Man, or did you say the Amazing?
You said what was next up. So basically, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the worst as far as I'm concerned.
Then Spider-Man 3.
I will grant you that Spider-Man 3 is the second worst.
Yeah.
Followed by Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Yeah, I agree. And then Spider-Man 1, right?
And then Spider-Man 1.
Spider-Man 1 or Homecoming? Because I think Homecoming's next in the list.
No.
You think SpiderVerse? We've got Homecoming. We've got Amazing Spider-Man 1. We just said we've got Homecoming left. SpiderVerse. Spider-Man 2.
Homecoming is after Spider-Man 1.
Yeah, I think so.
Fair enough.
I think so. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with, do you give it SpiderVerse or do you give Spider-Man 2?
Tough one. Very tough one. I think Into Spider-Verse is probably one of the best animated movies I've seen since Transformers, a movie in 1986. Okay? Me personally. And it's weird because I'm a cartoonist and I don't like a lot of animated movies.
I'm not a big animated movie guy.
But I think this movie was fantastic. Just the look of it, the story in and of itself. But I got a soft spot for Spider-Man 2. Okay. Spider-Man 2 really won me over.
No, I think Spider-Man 2 is one of the most complete and perfect superhero movies, not just Spider-Man. And I think they nailed pretty much almost everything that you can in a Spider-Man film. I don't love Tobey Maguire in the role compared to what we've seen come after, but you really, I mean, in terms of a popcorn summertime superhero beginning, middle, and end, I don't think you can beat it, right?
You know, it's another one of those situations where it subverted expectations. But it subverted expectations in the right way that didn't kind of ruin the entire genre. Yeah. Because in the second movie, you figure if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you figure that who is Spider-Man, the secret of his identity is going to be one of his through lines that's going to run through the entire series. And until some kind of big cataclysmic event happens, nobody's going to get to know who the heck this guy is until there's some kind of huge shakeup. Yeah. And the fact that in the second movie, Mary Jane finds out that he's Peter Parker, so we can stop, pulling this will they or won't they nonsense and just get down to Spider-Man. It's the same problem with the end of The Dark Knight, where the end of Spider-Man 2 promises, okay, we're done with this kind of this fledgling romance. Sure. They're together. and the next movie is just going to be about the pitfalls of being Spider-Man and having a relationship and trying to become an adult, right?
Yeah.
And then you get Spider-Man 3 with Clayface and Sandman and
right.
And his bad Venom, and you're like, all right, well, they didn't really deliver it. Just like you got The Dark Knight Rises, where suddenly 8 years later, even though they set it up so at the end of the Dark Knight, Batman was going to be the villain, and they pinned all the crimes of the Joker and Two-Face on him at the end of the movie,
right?
And so it was going to be, and then you find out he retired, and he's been gone for 8 years, and his legs don't work anymore, and then he's,
yeah.
And you're like, what happened? You promised so much, and you didn't give it to us. But I think the promise at the end of Spider-Man 2, that's one of the first movies of modern era that I couldn't wait for the next one.
Yeah.
Like I was like, all right, I want to see where they take this.
Yeah.
And, and then we got Spider-Man 3 with jazz hands and all that stuff. So, I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. But it's a tough call because Into the Spider-Verse I really thought was amazing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it all the way through. I didn't find it compromised in the least, and that's not a counter to your earlier comment. I'm not talking about all the social issues and stuff like that. I just thought that the story in and of itself was well done.
Yeah.
I don't think it cut any. It didn't cut corners. It didn't pull any punches. I mean, they killed off his own. Spoiler alert. They killed off one.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid to go there to be a serious movie as well as a cartoon.
Yeah.
So, I have to see it again.
Yeah.
I mean, I really want to see it again. I really want to go to the theater and see it again. I don't want to wait for it to come in a home video and watch it in my living room. I want to go to the theater and see it again. So that says a lot. But I still have a really soft spot for Spider-Man 2. So that's gonna have to be my favorite.
All right, I think it's pretty fair, and I think I'll take it. And we have to get to the amazing interview from Young the Giant, Francois. I got to interview him over the summer, so this is coming from the summertime. He's in town to play a festival. That you might know them from My Body and Cough Syrup, where they're big hits. They have a new album out this time, but I got to ask him some cool questions besides just playing the festival and being in New York. But we got to talk about the new album a little bit, and got to ask him their pop culture guilty pleasures while on the road. So this is Francois from Young the Giant.
You guys just released a new single, Simplify. Talk to me about the single. Talk to me about the lyrics. Hearing the song, it's funny. The title kind of signifies the mass appeal quality to the music. It seems to be a very good blend. But talk to me about the song itself and what it kind of represents for you and what it means for the next album that you mentioned you're finishing up.
Sure. So the themes that we sort of explore in that song are definitely themes that you're going to see touched on quite a few times on this record. The last album was more about looking out and sort of trying to make a statement about the world around us, and this album is definitely more introspective. 3 of us have gotten married in the past year, so there's a lot more.
That's a life change. That's a life change.
Yeah. Definitely big, very, very rock and roll. All of us getting married. We just sort of, I think, are turning our eyes towards our own lives and the relationships. Sort of makes them so special, and I think a lot of people in general right now, there's just so much, just sort of focusing on the things that are important in your life and that you can count on. So there's a lot of that on this record. And then also we recorded quite a few of these songs live, which is something that we hadn't really done. Just the first album, and it leads to kind of, I think, songs that don't get overbaked and overthought. It's very easy to sit in a studio and try every single studio trick and try everything 20 different ways. And when you're
Sure.
playing a song with the, the guys in your band and you're watching each other, you kind of have to trust that what you're putting tape is gonna be the thing, the song. So there is definitely that sort of quality on the record.
So you mentioned, 3 out of the 4 guys just ended up getting married. How does that influence the songwriting, and how does that influence, like I'm a writer and I do all kinds of things, and I have a son, and it, having a son all of a sudden made me super focused on the time that I have, because when you're single you have all the time in the world. So how does it influence you guys in terms of just being productive and songwriting and just in general?
I think it definitely changes your perspective a little bit. In some ways it feels like sort of a new chapter of our lives, and that's already is going to be just filled with inspiration. Also, it takes a relationship that ideally has already been maturing and growing over the years, and it really brings it to that next level. And it's something that I hadn't experienced before. And I know Samir and I have both, when we're talking about lyrically, like, what does that mean to actually know someone that well and to have that person know you that well? And there's something very vulnerable about it, but also very liberating. So yeah, I think we just kind of it's a really deep well for inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're just starting to tap it.
So let me ask you, your first record, came out, My Body was a big hit. There was definitely, that album was very well received. How hard is it to replicate that initial, energy? Because, when you're a band trying to make it, I remember, doing the band thing like 10, 15 years ago, and it was like, it's just such a different component to when you're actually a professional musician going and touring and you have crowds and you have this audience. The music is different. Do you ever try to recapture what you guys did on that first record to maybe, appeal to that same audience, or does it even enter your mind when you get in the studio?
I wouldn't say we really think about that too much. I think, if anything, trying to capture something like that is going to yield something really stale. And if there is something that is really important, and it's just keeping that same energy from the first record and the second record, when it's like, oh, now we have to write another full-length album, and then the third record where it's exciting because you feel like you're really starting to come into yourself as a writer, and now the fourth record brings its own challenges. So I think you can always tap into some sort of energy, but it's got to be appropriate for the time and for where this album is in your career. And it has to be fun for us. I think if we kept on going to the studio and trying to recreate things that we've done in the past, it would really become a bummer very quickly.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That. And our favorite musicians are always those who are able to push their sound and their style and evolve over the course of their careers, and that's something that we definitely seek to do ourselves.
That's terrific. Sorry, you're gonna hear my son in the background here.
No problem.
Are you already in the band into like the comic book movies? Are you into comics in general, or are you big Netflix guys? Do you have time to really consume that kind of content?
Oh yeah, we have plenty of time on the bus. I grew up a pretty big X-Men fan, so I've been just since they started coming out with X-Men movies, I've been pretty happy, even with the less than stellar ones. I actually thought the movie was such a great way to cap it off, cap off that series with at least with Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman's versions of those characters. But yeah, we're definitely we are big consumers of pop culture, and I think what's so great about being kind of creators in some way of pop culture is you can be informed by the things around you, and it is such a golden age of television, and even film is still pushing the boundaries in a lot of ways. So we're definitely paying attention to that.
Did you get a chance to see Infinity War yet? Any thoughts on that?
I haven't actually. That's the one that sort of passed me by. The last few movies that I got to see were the most recent Deadpool and then Hereditary, and I haven't made the time yet for Infinity Wars, but it's on the list for sure.
It's on the list. What kind of TV are you guys consuming these days?
Well, we were watching a bunch of World Cup. I'm actually driving up to. My wife is Brazilian, so I'm an adopted Brazilian.
There you
fan.
go.
I was watching that game, and unfortunately, they just got knocked out by Belgium 10 minutes ago. So I don't know. We'll have to find something else. I'll still watch. I'll watch the games, but I don't have the vested interest anymore. I need to change out of my Brazil jersey. Actually, I don't want a bunch of jeers. Yeah, we definitely kind of watch whatever. On the bus, we have the old standbys. Like, we still watch a lot of South Park.
South Park is great. South Park is great.
Whatever ends up on the DVR and passes the time.
When are you guys expecting the new album to come out?
So we're hoping to have it just done within the next month, and then I think probably it'll be out. The whole album will be out around October, and we're still trying to figure out how we want to tease it, and maybe release one or two more tracks, and gather up a whole bunch of content. We have a music video for Simplify coming out, I want to say next week. So it's kind of that really exciting point where the record is almost done, and now it's about sort of thinking of how you're going to share it with everyone, which we always want to kind of do it a little differently every time. So we're figuring that out right now.
Do you guys have a title for it at this point, or is that still up in the air?
That's still kind of up in the air. We're sort of kind of vacillating between a handful of them, and we're starting to get some artwork, and we have a few sort of really strong themes that we want to focus on. So I think we'll just wake up and get into a meeting together at some point. It'll be like, okay, this is clearly the winner right now. But as of right now, there's still a couple.
Terrific. Well, safe travels, safe driving. Again, I really appreciate you taking time out, and looking forward to the festival.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Talk to you later.
All right, thanks. Bye.
That was Young the Giant. If you guys notice, we're a little bit long tonight. That's because we're streaming from the ethos of the internet. It's really great. But what we do every week, besides just talk about comics, movies, TV, and pop culture, we go spinning the rack. We'll get that going another time. All right. We bring in the most fantastical pop culture news of all times. All right, Netflix versus Disney is escalating. Oh, dear goodness. Apparently, there is a war brewing. ABC executive Channing Dungey moved from ABC over to Netflix, and it signals a new front in the Reed Hastings battle with Bob Iger in the run-up to the Mouse House Digital. This is from Hollywood Reporter. Analyst Todd Junger of Bernstein figures that Netflix will spend $11.9 billion in 2019 on content and $14.5 billion in 2020 on content. But the 22% year-over-year increase will be easily manageable because Netflix adds more than 25 million subscribers each year. So this is in contrast to certain reports we got where Netflix was kind of hurting because they're investing so much money into everything that they're doing. But we'll see what that means. But this is the big part that I got out of this. I didn't realize this. Imitation is flattering following Disney's live-action Jungle Book, which grossed $966 million globally in 2016. Netflix picked up Mowgli, Andy Serkis's film based on the same Rudyard Kipling story that was made at Warner Brothers, for example. Netflix also invested in developing comic book universes. They paid somewhere between $30 to $50 million for the Millarverse. Way to go, Mark Millar. You did good, bud. They also nabbed the rights to Rob Liefeld's Extreme Universe. I did not know that. So Rob Liefeld. So.
How well is the Extreme Universe known, though?
how well is the Millarverse really known outside of the stuff he did for Top Cow? So I just want to remind everyone at Netflix, you can pick up the Mainstream in stores right now, and I get the rights back to that in a couple years.
This other upcoming title called Epicenter.
Epicenter, we'll tease that. Tease, my man, tease. And The Sire, Volume 2, available now. Superhero forced by his own costume. All right, this has been a blast. Tune in next week when we are going to be talking about Aquaman. But we're not just going to be talking Aquaman. We're going to do a review of the movie with as many fish puns as possible. And we're going to be doing it live at Funny Business in Nyack, New York. So if you're in the Rockland County area, come check us out. We're going to play Pop Culture. It's called Non-Celebrity Pop Culture Jeopardy with our live audience. We've got Lisa Hawkins from Valiant Entertainment going to give us some inside info into what they're doing. They've got some movie stuff. They've got some awesome things happening. This has been fun. We'll see you next week.